This video is just an update video to an existing one that we already have about how to set up your account as a brand new owner or agency admin. The old one, a lot of the information was still relevant. However, we've made visual changes to a lot of the systems since that one was recorded, so a lot of new users were kind of lost because things have been moved slightly. So this will just be an update to that. Now, as far as the video goes today, I just want to keep this kind of high level overview on some of the things that I recommend going through, when you first set up your account. So I don't want to dig too deep into each individual thing that I talk about, but I will reference probably several times throughout this video other videos that you can watch to dig deeper into that particular feature that I'm talking about. So the first thing I would do as a new user is I would go into settings and then system settings and then your company settings right here. Alright, so now depending on which version of Vacation CRM you have, if you have the light version versus the pro, it may look slightly different. So you won't, if you're on the light version, you won't see stuff like this, but just so skip over that because that's not relevant to you. But for all of you that are on the pro, it'll look pretty much like this. So I'll just go through everything here. So the first thing is company logo. This logo you can upload. The only thing this is used for at the moment is for the commission statements that you can send out to your ICs. So, if you have ICs and you're going to use that feature, for sure upload a logo. If not, you don't really need to. It doesn't affect your invoice or anything like that. Now, the next few things are some check boxes here. So the ones that I recommend checking for pretty much everyone would be enable auto emails for agents. What this will do is once you check this and save and then log out and log back in, it will give all users on your account an option under settings for auto email templates. And if I just open that in a new tab, that is where you can configure the automated emails that you can have sent out to your clients. Checking that box though will not automatically turn these on. They will still be disabled up here. It just gives you access to this screen. So there's really no harm in checking that box right away just to give everyone access to it. The second thing here is use booking IDs as invoice IDs. So originally when we first launched Vacation CRM, we used the trip ID, I believe it was, as the invoice number, which was just a completely made up number. So it was more for the back end of the system. It's not tied to really anything other than the trip ID. And when clients are filling out the payment form that we have, it asks for the confirmation number. So a lot of clients were entering that invoice number, which is not going to work because it's just a kind of a made up number for the back end of the system. So if you check this box, rather than use that made up number, the invoice will show the confirmation number, which is the client's booking number from that booking at the top of the invoice. So that's what you would check that for, just to avoid confusion. This checkbox I would not check because that will turn off the credit card section from the client profile, so you wouldn't be able to see that if they entered it from a form. You wouldn't be able to see it, so I would not check that. Allow API to merge profiles. This I would check as well, because what this does is it allows the system to look for potential duplicate profiles when a client submits, say, the registration form or the lead form. Basically, if it recognizes that a client who's submitting a form already has an existing profile in the system, rather than create a second duplicate profile for that same person, it will just merge any new information into their existing profile. So checking this box will cut down on quite a bit of the duplicates that are created in the system. Next, we have links to the 3 different main forms that we have. So we have the registration, payment, and trip lead form, and for all of those there's a direct link and an embedded link. If you want to see the forms as is, you can just take the direct link and highlight it and open it in a new tab, and you can see the form itself. The embedded link is what you would use. It's basically the code you would use to embed it on a page on your website. And then here you have manage API form fields. Now this is one of those places where I'm going to say there's a separate video that digs deeper into this, but basically clicking here will allow you to customize your form as you see fit. So you can see here I've made these this orange color to kind of blend in with the website on, on the sample forms that we have. So you can do things like that. You can pick what you want to be visible or required, or you can uncheck these to hide it. You can put your disclaimer stuff in there, the agreement checkboxes, all sorts of different things. I would say get the hang of how the forms work before you go too crazy in here changing stuff, because oftentimes new users aren't sure what things are and they'll just start checking or unchecking boxes, and before they know it, they're kind of in over their head with, they've completely changed the form and they want to get it back how it was, and it's kind of difficult to do that. So get the hang of the forms first, then feel free to go in here. In the same thing you can do for like the payment form, and then finally the trip lead form. So that's your settings for that. Now, as we scroll down here, there's several more checkboxes. So this one, enable user level API forms. This, in most cases, I would say would not be checked. So originally we only had the one set of forms like this, and this is designed for most of our accounts where you have an agency owner that has, say, 10, 12, 15, whatever ICs, and you all operate under the same agency name and the same website. This is the form you would use, would be the agency level form that I just talked about. And there will be a drop down for who is your travel agent, where the client can pick who they're working with to submit, say, their registration form, which is like their booking form. What this checkbox is for is, let's say you operate more like a host, where all of your ICs have their own agency name and their own website. They want their own set of forms. So if you check this box, every user on your account will have an option under settings where they will be able to manage their user API forms. So you can see mine are blue. Let's say I have my own agency, and the kind of layout or theme of that website on my for my agency website is blue. So I want my forms to match. So that's why that's slightly different than what you see here. So that's what that checkbox is for. Show admins first on the API form. That is for the drop down here. So anybody that's an admin, it will show them first, followed by everyone else. If you don't check that, it's just alphabetical order. So if you're an owner and your name starts with a Z or an S or something lower in the alphabet, you can make yourself show up first if you wanted to. Now, these two things here, it's totally up to you. I personally don't think they're needed to be checked. So that's automatic reminder for final payments due, automatic reminder for trip returns. If you check those boxes on your dashboard, in the agent reminders section, it will have reminders automatically that will show up for you, the agent, that will say like upcoming trip return or upcoming final payment reminder for each person that has a trip that they're getting ready to come back from, or that has a payment coming up. The reason I don't think they're needed is because you have dedicated sections elsewhere on the dashboard for that stuff. So for the final payments due, I have a whole box dedicated to just that. So I feel like it's redundant to have a reminder up here and a whole box for that. And then same thing for the trip returns. This is probably a bad example right now. I don't have anyone that's currently away, but if I did, it shows the name, their trip date, and the return date. And by default, they will stay on here for a few days after they return, just so you don't miss it if they come back over the weekend. So in order to keep that more manageable, I personally don't think it makes sense to check those boxes. But if you want them, you can check them. Hide agency commission statements. Basically, when the commission statements are sent out to your ICs, it shows the total commission and then their portion of it. If you wanted to hide the total commission so that they, don't blatantly see, the full commission, they just see their own, you can check this box. And then show lead availability status for all agents. If you turn this on, or if you check this box on the dashboard, we have basically a stoplight system here where an agent can click on this and they can say, I am available for leads, or I can only take a few, or I'm just booked up, I can't take any more leads on. So if you check that box, all agents can see all other agents' availability right here. So that way, if Steven wants to give a lead out, he knows he should not give that to Lisa because she's full. Dan and Alicia, maybe, but all these people in green are good to go to take those leads. So that's what that does. If you don't check that box, they won't be able to see, non-admins won't be able to see everyone else's lead availability. And then default currency, this just changes the symbol next to the dollar amounts to, whatever you use in your country. So it's by default, it's going to be US dollar sign. And then finally, we've got company contact info. This ties into the funds request feature, which would be what you would use to send an invoice to, say, like a hotel for a wedding commission that you're requesting or something like that. So you can fill that out if you want, but it's not super important initially. So, do what you need to do on here and click save, and now you're done with the company settings. The next thing I would go over is under settings and system settings and company invoice settings. So in here is where you're going to set up the template for your invoices. So you can upload a logo. Now if your logo looks distorted here, that's okay. Double check, but when you see the actual invoice, it will look normal. It won't be distorted. It's best, if you're going to do this, to pick something that's kind of a rectangle shape more so than like a square, because the spot where we have kind of blocked off for the logos to go is a rectangle. So if you want your logo to be as large as possible on that section, a rectangle works best. The footer text, that'll go at the bottom. And then of course your disclaimer here, you can do what you want to do with it, edit it as you see fit. And if you wanted to, you can also set up additional invoice templates. So, if you have a main one, but then you have one for, those one-off types of trips where the verbiage down here needs to be different, or if you have a different brand that you might sell here and there where it's got a different logo, you can set those up here as additional templates. And once you set up more than one, you will see a drop down on the trip screen next to the preview and generate button to load, to pick which invoice you want to preview or generate, which template. Now the next thing, if you are adding ICs, we basically, when you sign up, we create the account, and you, the first user, whoever signed up, they will be the first user, which is an admin user. But even if you signed up for, say, 10 users on your account, we don't create the other 9. We leave that up to you because we don't know what permission levels you want to give them or what percentage for commission, things like that. So that is done under settings and manage users, not to be confused with manage user details. So manage users, and then you'll simply just click add new user. Now this is another one, I have a whole separate video on that, but just to touch on it, you're going to go in here and you're going to fill this stuff out. So if you have questions on that, check in the user center in VCRM. Actually, I've got the user center up. Adding users, this video here. Now the next thing you may do is you may have a spreadsheet of client profile data that you want to upload from your own spreadsheet that you've been keeping track of, or another CRM, or something like that. So that is under utilities and bulk upload profiles. Now if you don't have this as an option, look in your user settings, and there is a checkbox for that right here. So you can give that access to non-admins or yourself if you don't have that as an option. So make sure you check that. There's also a video on that here, right here, where I actually go into an example of how to do it and what to watch for, and things like that. So be sure to watch that before you attempt this, because there's not an undo button if you were to import things incorrectly. Hopefully you don't have thousands of profiles that you import somehow incorrectly. So keep that in mind. The next thing you may go over is under settings and system settings, and then default email templates. Now these are for the email icons that you see throughout the system, mainly on the dashboard, like these here, up here. There are templates you can tie to these different email icons that you see throughout the system. Now there are actually 2 ways to edit those emails. Under settings, there is email templates, and then under system settings there's default email templates. Those are both for the exact same thing. Those are both for the email icons throughout the system. The difference between the two is default email templates here, only agency admins have access to those. So the idea is you can go in here and you can set up these templates for your entire agency. Now again, there's another video called All About Emails in the User Center that you may watch that talks about this stuff, but I wouldn't spend a ton of time on these, especially things like the payment reminders or the birthday or the anniversary, because you can automate all of those and several others in here. You will want to set up the invoice one for sure, because there's not a way to automate the sending of invoices, and there's a couple more you may want to automate, like the flight collecting request, the payment request, stuff like that. So that is agency wide. Now the reason we have email templates here is, let's say you set up all of these for your agents and one of your agents starts using them, but they really don't like the verbiage that you've used. That's, not kind of their style, how they email their clients, their tone, whatever it may be. They can go to email templates here and they can click enable, which I've done. And when they enable these, the regular email templates, they will no longer use what is set up for them under default email templates, but then that means they have to set up their own in here. So this is where I've created all of mine. So for my invoice, I have several different templates in there for different situations. So that's what that is for. Alright, now the next item is editing codes. So let me go into a trip just for a second to show you what I'm referring to. I'm just going to try this one. I didn't think I had to have something open already, but hopefully this is a good example. Let's see. Alright, so under Manage Generics there is a section called Edit Codes. So what a code is basically it's an item in a drop down or a multi-select box. So for example, this is a field. These boxes are fields, and this one is a drop down. The items listed in here are called codes. So if you ever need to add something to one of these fields, you can do that under Manage Generics and Edit Codes. Again, there's a video in the User Center specifically for that, adding suppliers, managing codes, so watch that if you want to learn more about that. But it's nice to be able to customize whatever it is you need to do throughout the system. So if you need to add suppliers, here, if there's a supplier you use that's kind of obscure or smaller or newer that we don't have in there, you can add it. If there are suppliers that you do not use whatsoever, you could remove them. Now don't delete them, you can just unmap them, which we talk about that in the other video. The other place, just as a little heads up, that I recommend not editing is the trip status. It will allow you to add additional statuses here, but I don't recommend doing it because there's a lot of programming behind the scenes that are tied to the trip status to kind of tell the system the context of that status. So for example, on say the revenue or commission reports, it will not include by default any statuses like canceled or expired or void or anything like that, because it knows that's not a valid trip. When you go and add your own statuses, it has no clue what that status actually means or what the context is of it. So keep in mind, I wouldn't mess with the trip status. But for a lot of the other stuff like the supplier stuff like that, go ahead and edit it as needed to add the items to the list that you use. And then finally, the last thing I will go over today in this video is under Manage Generics and Edit Fields. So the boxes that you see throughout the system are the fields, and you can add fields almost anywhere you want, with the exception of the reservation components. But you could add fields to a profile or to a trip or to a reservation. Again, I have a video specifically for that. So if you want to dig in a little deeper, watch that video. Now, one piece of advice I can give you is and this factors in with the codes too, I would recommend not changing anything that is default in there, meaning don't delete or hide a system field to create your own version of that field. There's no reason to do that. So I'll just give you a good example under manage codes here. So let's go, or edit codes here. So we have the supplier / reservation screen. That's the one I was talking about earlier. So these codes here you don't see anywhere in the system except for on this screen basically. And I've seen several times where someone will, they won't like AV being listed for Apple Vacations. So they will delete this and then they'll add it again, or they'll edit it. I guess they can't edit the code name. They'll delete this and then they'll add their own version of Apple Vacations where it has a different code. However, the system uses those codes to determine like when the import reservation from supplier button is visible. So if you create your own, it's going to break that, with something other than AV, because that's what it looks like. So, if it's listed in here, use whatever we have set up for the code, but again, you can create your own. Same thing with editing fields. Don't delete, say, a phone number field and then add your own phone number field for whatever reason, because that can cause issues down the road. But throughout this, you can, like I said, you can edit whatever you want. So just to give you an example, and I think I do this in the other video, on my profile screen, I added a whole section, new section for emergency contact, and then I added these fields in there. So you can do something like that. I also changed the preferences section around a little bit. By default, there's a lot of these yes or no questions that I didn't really care for, so I hid those and I added my own stuff like preferred destinations, which is a drop down, or a multi-select where you can select from a list of items. I did preferred hotels. I did airline seating preferences, or preferred airlines, or travel preferences. You can do stuff like that throughout the system. If there are additional dates that you want to keep track of on the trip screen, you can do that as well. If there was some other due date you wanted to put in here, you could do that. It'd be a box just like this, labeled however you want. And, you can tie that into custom reports and things like that. Again, though, I wouldn't go too wild with that initially. I would get the hang of the system, see how things work before you go digging in and changing stuff around, because you might find that you don't think you need something and you hide it, but then later on down the road you do need it and you don't even remember you hiding it before. You forget that was even a thing. So, get the hang of the system, but just know that as you learn it, you can come in here and you can change that. So, like I said, the User Center is a good resource for more information on what I went over today, but like I said, I just wanted this to be kind of a high-level overview to show you kind of the steps that I recommend you go through. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll be glad to help you. Thank you.